Good evening, everyone. I will go ahead and call this meeting of Council for Monday, August 24th to order. It is 5:30. We have a very full agenda, so we're going to try and keep on time as much as possible, trying to be as efficient and expedient as possible, but still obviously performing our duties in the fullest. So speaking of agenda, the first order of item is our land acknowledgement. The City of Lacombe acknowledges that we live, work, and govern on the shared territory of Treaty 6. We honor the histories, languages, cultures, and continuing contributions of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and other First Nations, as well as the Métis people of the Battle River Territory District 3 and beyond. We affirm our ongoing relationship with this land and confirm to the respectful and commit to the respectful and meaningful engagement with Indigenous peoples as partners in our community. So the first things to review then would be the two agendas, the consent agenda and the regular agenda. First up would be the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that they wish to remove from the consent agenda, or if not, be prepared to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented? Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Very good. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. Councillor Span, do you want to enter in your, it didn't register it. Oh. Are you able to reopen the voting? We just have one missing. If not, we could just make the verbal acknowledgement that we have a vote on behalf of Councillor Span, which is in the affirmative or the negative?
I will vote in the affirmative.
Affirmative. Very good. So that is a unanimous decision then. That moves us then on to the regular agenda. Do I have any omissions, additions for that agenda? If not, we can go ahead and adopt the agenda as presented. Councillor Proud.
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is unanimous with everybody electronically in. That's good. Just making sure that the equipment's working because you never know. Okay, so that then takes us, we don't have any open forum that I've been informed of, so that makes us then move on to presentations. We do have one presentation, North Red Deer River Water Services Commission update. Looks like Director Thompson is going to be leading us in this. So I'll invite you to take the floor and introduce your topic, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Council. It's an honor being here on behalf of the Water Commission, and I'm on this side of the table because I'm here in my capacity as the Chief Administrative Officer for that commission. So I'm aware of the length of the agenda. I'm also aware that this item is later on in the agenda, so I'll keep things fairly to the point and high level today. Online, I do have two representatives from Brownlee who are co-presenting a component of this. They are lawyers for the commission, and they're going to help outline some specifics, but they, I am sure, will also keep it to the point and high level as well. So today I'm going to talk briefly about a water line extension update. The commission is looking to extend its system north to Maskwacis. We'll talk about that just briefly at a high level. Why the commission is updating its bylaws and membership agreements. That's the kind of the heart of why I'm here, is that the commission is updating its governing bylaws and replacing them with three separate bylaws, bylaw 101, 102, and 103. And we'll finish off the proposed request for council support for the changes. For those who aren't aware, and if not, and if you are aware in this room, certainly for the benefit of the public, The Water Commission is a 50-kilometer transmission line that brings water from the city of Red Deer and supplies 5 member municipalities, rural and urban. It supplies nearly 3 million cubic meters of drinking water annually. And as I said, there's an extension north from Ponoka up to the Ermineskin Cree Nation, which is well underway. This is a schematic of the Commission's system, bringing water from the Red Deer River through the Red Deer treatment plant. The Commission buys water from Red Deer and transmits it to the member municipalities. And the Commission has a license to divert up to nearly 13.4 million cubic meters annually from the Red Deer River. With respect to its waterline extension from Ponoka North, the Commission has entered into a grant agreement with Alberta to fully fund the waterline extension. The extended system will have capacity to serve the other 3 First Nations in the area, those being Montana First Nation, Samson Cree Nation, and the Louisbourg Tribe. Tenders, we did plan to have tenders in place between September and October 15th. We are awaiting Alberta government's confirmation of filling a funding gap. And so that timeline may be delayed somewhat, but we are still looking to achieve a water on by 2028. Although again, it depends on the province filling a funding gap in the interim. So why we are updating the Commission's bylaws. One, legislation has changed and our bylaws need to align with the Municipal Government Act. 2, as I mentioned before, the Ermineskin Cree Nation is becoming a member of the Commission. We have a membership agreement and memorandum of understanding in place with the nation, and updating the bylaws is one of the final steps to make sure that they're included alongside all the other members, and as a final step towards equal vote governance. One of the major changes and philosophies in updating these bylaws is that it takes all of the most important and key provisions out of the membership agreements that are currently between the Commission and each of the members and moves them into bylaws. That ensures the bylaws are transparent. It ensures that the rules in which all the members participate in the Commission are all upfront and center and equal amongst everybody. And it also ensures that we are ensuring clarity and accountability for members and administration and the Commission going forward. So we've been going through an engagement process with respect to the bylaws since March of 2026. The Commission passed first reading this spring. We met and have been meeting with member municipality administrations between May and June, explaining the changes, providing an opportunity for input and feedback. In June and July, we've received feedback and have revised the documents, the bylaws as well, in response to that feedback, and that has continued through into August. And now I am here along with the representatives from Brownlee, just advising council of some of these changes and describing kind of what we heard from the municipalities regarding these upcoming changes. Our aim is to present second and third reading of the new bylaws at the Commission September 21st, 2026 meeting. So this time I'm just going to turn it over to the representatives from Brownlee to talk a little bit more about the bylaws themselves, and I'll let them take it away. Richard, you're muted.
Thank you, Jordan. So as Jordan said, there's 3 bylaws which are being proposed: a governance bylaw, an operations bylaw, and a terms of service bylaw. The governance bylaw brings the bylaw into alignment with the Municipal Government Act as a result of revisions which have been made to the MGA. The operations bylaw firmly establishes the administration of the Commission, and the terms of service bylaw provides uniformity to the service terms of providing water to all of the member municipalities. Currently, there are separate water supply agreements for each municipality. We've reviewed them. They're fairly basic. They don't meet the needs of a modern utility. And so what we're proposing is that the terms of service bylaw does that. One of the revisions which we made after listening to our member municipalities is we had a provision in the governance bylaw which enlarged the people that could be elected or were eligible to be directors. We changed it. Before it was elected officials only. We changed it to elected officials and administrative staff, so senior staff. And we heard back from the members that they would like it restricted to elected officials only. And so we've reverted back to that. Also, with respect to the terms of service bylaw, the prior bylaw did not have or did not well articulate what sort of remedies were available to the commission in the event of non-payment or non-compliance. And so we've added an escalated cumulative process so that we can ensure that there's compliance. So Dylan, if you can, Dylan's going to very briefly go through the bylaws and just hit the key points of the bylaws.
Just give me one moment. I just have a presentation all. Perfect. So Jordan already went through the statutory background here. So I'll start with bylaw 1. So that's the bylaw we're replacing here. It was enacted firstly back in 2004. So it's been quite a bit of time since this was first put into place. So we think this is a good time to kind of revamp these bylaws and make sure that they're built properly for what the commission's doing today. Again, the governance bylaw is set out to govern the relationship between how the members govern the commission. So it sets out how a member appoints a director, the meeting and voting procedures, the general administrative structure of the commission. And we've also added some additional language that wasn't present in bylaw 1, allowing the board to regulate director behavior. So it allows, in certain circumstances, for directors to be removed from the board by the commission if there's unethical or criminal conduct, a breach of fiduciary duty, conduct that is materially detrimental to the reputation of the commission, or missing 3 consecutive meetings without authorization. We also added some extra language to the meetings and procedure portion of the bylaw. So under the Municipal Government Act, the commission's director meetings, board meetings are supposed to be available to the public, but bylaw 1 had no language in terms of how that can be brought to the attention of the public. So we've added language stating that the commission can post the meetings on their website for the public to access. The general administration of the commission will remain very similar. It's going to be controlled by a CAO, which will have broad authority to administer the commission. They'll generally oversee the day-to-day operations of the commission. We've ensured that admitting a new member requires supermajority support from the board. We think this is an important decision that the board makes, and it should have broad approval from the members before occurring. It also provides the board with broad authority to calculate an appropriate financial contribution to the new member, including the reasonable cost of capital, contribution to the capital cost of the existing system, and the costs incurred by members establishing the commission. It also sets out how a member may withdraw from the commission, and importantly, it clarifies that a withdrawing member will have no equity interest in the assets of the commission. It also provides certain circumstances in which the board can remove a member for cause, and that includes the material breach of a bylaw, persistent failure to meet financial obligations, or acting outside of the commission's best interests. Finally, it sets out the disestablishment process of disestablishing the commission, which hopefully never occurs, but if that were to happen, it would require a 3/4 member approval, and it would also require resolutions by the members' councils. And in this event, a disestablishment plan would be created, which would set out how all the assets and liabilities are to be dealt with and the allocation of any surplus, if any. The next bylaw is the operations bylaw. This bylaw is very straightforward. It just provides the commission with the general powers to provide permits. If there are other utility users or other individuals who will be working close to commission infrastructure, it sets out the process in which that person can get a permit and can communicate with the commission to be able to ensure that commission infrastructure isn't damaged. The last major bylaw is the terms of service bylaw, and this bylaw sets out the relationship of the commission to the members as customers. So it sets out how exactly the commission is to provide water to members, the price of that water, and ensures that member rights are protected. It sets out the process for an application for water services, and a water services agreement is a prerequisite for the supply of water by the commission, and it allows the commission to place various provisions for water services, which deal with things such as the construction costs, inspections, and ensuring that member infrastructure complies with the commission's engineering standards. Very similar to bylaw 1, the rate for water services is calculated through a single volumetric rate, which is calculated by dividing the approved net revenue by the total estimated water to be supplied. The bylaw provides the commission with broad access to member lands. This is to ensure that the commission, in situations where they need to get access to their infrastructure, can do so, but in most situations, the commission will be notifying members prior to accessing the land. The only instances in which they wouldn't be doing so is in the case of an emergency, and in that case, they'll notify the member as soon as possible. It also places various obligations on members, so members are obligated to ensure that cross connections don't occur, to ensure that commission infrastructure remains accessible. They have a duty to notify the commission if there's an issue with the infrastructure, and it ensures that a minimum annual payment is made by members to ensure a fair and equitable cost allocation. We've also added some more language in terms of what's the process for reducing or disconnecting water services. Sometimes this will have to be done for repairs or things of that nature, but in other instances, it talks about, well, what if a member isn't complying with a bylaw, and sets out various conditions in which the commission may reduce or disconnect water services in those circumstances. The final document we're providing is the membership template agreement. Again, we're hoping to keep this very simple. We really want the membership agreement to just set out the unique characteristics of that particular member. For example, what is the name of that member? Where should notice to that member be provided? Everything else points back to the bylaws. So one of the main thrusts of these new revised bylaws is ensuring that the entire relationship between the commission and its members exist in these bylaws rather than in any other agreements. Now, as mentioned, we did talk to all the members' administrations throughout this process, and we were provided feedback throughout. So again, should members be permitted to appoint municipal officials? After discussing, we've decided not to go forward with that. Should there be reimbursement of director fees and expenses? We've left that language open, so the commission could decide to do that in the future, but right now we understand the policy is that they don't. We've added language to ensure that the commission can do a 10-year capital forecast so they can make long-term plans, ensuring that members can provide input on the budget, and ensuring that broad regional impacts are considered by the board when allowing new members and when supplying water. Another point of discussion we heard from quite a few members is how water is supposed to be allocated under the bylaws. So under bylaw 1, there are certain set distributions of a minimum water allocation provided, and many members were wanted to discuss how those numbers were set. And those numbers were set years ago, and we have tried to mirror the language in bylaw 1. So as far as water allocation goes, there's no change under our revised bylaws. But we do believe this is an important discussion that the members should have sometime in the future. And we believe rather than putting it with this bylaw revision, that should be the subject of a standalone conversation sometime in the future. Again, we've added language ensuring that there's a minimum charge when no water is requested to ensure that in the event one member decides not to take advantage of the commission's infrastructure, the remaining members aren't forced to kind of subsidize that infrastructure. And we've also softened the language in terms of in what situations the commission can reduce or disconnect water services. Some members had concerns that the commission was able to do that on too quickly. So we've lengthened the amount of time that a breach is required and have made it more difficult for the board to reduce or disconnect water services. And if we have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Very good, thank you. Do we have any questions from council in regards to this presentation? As was mentioned, this is an item later on in the agenda. But now is a good time to ask, especially our visitors online, if you have anything. If not, does not appear to be so. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. That was very informative. And I will allow you to remove yourself from the presenter table and carry on.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Checking the time, we're just a little bit early for the public hearing, which is the next on our agenda. That doesn't start until 6 o'clock, and it would be improper for me to begin that early because people may be arriving for that specific item. So we'll move along to request for decision. I think we can discuss 6.1 safely, and that will probably bring us right about the right time. So Director Piche, will you be leading us on this item? Please go ahead.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor Hibbs, and good evening, Council. Tonight, I'm presenting the Privacy, Access, and Information Governance Program Policy. As Council is likely aware, in June 2025, the Access to Information Act and the Protection of Privacy Act replaced the FOIP Act. These acts provide a modernized framework for balancing two important responsibilities: protecting personal information while also ensuring appropriate public access to government records. Under the Protection of Privacy Act, the POPA, public bodies are required to establish and maintain a privacy management program proportionate to the volume and sensitivity of personal information that they hold. Administration has been working on this implementation since the new legislation has come into effect. This has included council orientation and training, amendments to the procedural bylaw, the CAO bylaw, updates to our routine disclosure policy, and ongoing work to update internal procedures, directives, and staff training. There are three components to this policy. The first is Privacy, Access, and Information Governance Program. This establishes the city's overall framework for managing information, protecting privacy, and providing access to records. Council is delegating the authority to the CAO to maintain the detailed standards, procedures, and guidelines needed to administer this program. The second part of the policy is annual training. POPA requires recurring training for those performing services for a public body. The policy therefore provides for annual privacy and information management training for council and members of council-appointed committees, boards, and commissions. The third part of the policy is public access to records. The city's approach is to provide information through the most appropriate mechanisms where practical and within its authority. This can include proactively publishing information, providing records through routine disclosure, or using the formal ATIA, Access to Information Act, application process when required. The policy also provides reasonable fees where applicable, while ensuring that fees do not become an unreasonable barrier to accessing information. Ultimately, this policy is about protecting privacy, supporting transparency and accountability, and ensuring the city manages its information responsibly and consistently. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to support your council here in your deliberations.
Thank you, Director Piche. Do we have any questions on this item? Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Through to Director Piche. Can you please explain what routine disclosure is?
Thank you. That is a good question. So what routine disclosure would be is when there's automatic release of information. So this is something that we would be giving out to the public on a regular basis. It could be weekly, it could be monthly, it could be annually. A good example would be, say, planning and development statistics. We would provide those every once in a while. I'm not sure what the increments of those every monthly. Yeah. So we would provide that monthly, and that would be routine disclosure.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Or if not, if someone's prepared to make that motion. Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I move that council approves the proposed policy 18.211.01 2026 PO, Privacy Access and Information Governance Program.
I see no further light, so I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. So I hesitate to start anything new because we're so close to 6 o'clock. I even have my timer going off so that I wouldn't miss it. So before we begin the public hearing, I'll just take a few seconds and to sort of explain. Public hearings are the only opportunity that the public has to speak to council outside of some other very specific purposes. So nothing else on the agenda is participatory for the gallery. It is strictly this item. This item is in regards to some redistricting, which I will read officially when the time comes. We do that because this body has been elected to act in the capacity of decision-making for the community, but that doesn't mean that we do it in a silo or in silence. So there's always opportunities for the public to give feedback to council, whether it's at large or individually. If anybody at any time is curious as to how to do that, please reach out to either myself, a member of council, or administration as well, because it is really important that citizens, ratepayers have the ability to influence decisions. It's why we publish agendas on Thursdays prior to, so that they're published. You can read through them. You have an opportunity to ask questions. So I just wanted to just take a few minutes to reiterate that. I did mention earlier about the open forum. I'll just highlight that as an example. Open forum is an opportunity where residents or ratepayers can come and do up to a 5-minute presentation to council. It has to be pre-registered, but it can be pre-registered even that day, just by noon. However, there are some restrictions. Restrictions include that you cannot speak to an item that is on the agenda. So anything today on today's agenda would not have been appropriate for using the open forum, as well as things like a specific employee. If you had an issue with a specific staff member of the city, that also would not be the appropriate place to discuss something like that. But it is something that is available for residents, ratepayers. Presentations, again, again, also is something that's a little bit longer of an opportunity. You saw one earlier today where there was a presentation. Those can be a little bit longer, 15, 20 minutes, but those do require pre-registration and they require much longer of a heads up. We need to judge if that's appropriate for one thing, and we'd love to have the materials ahead of time as well. That's always available. But outside of that, there's always public engagement that you can do, whether it's council in the community. We host those approximately once a month so far. We were at the farmers market this past month. We will be at the Active Living Fair in September. But there's nothing stopping anyone from reaching out to specific members of council to discuss something. And then finally, there's also the ability to submit requests for information from the city as well. You can either do that by email, or there is also a portal on the website that allows you to do that. Forgive me for filling in the few minutes, but I might as well give you some information rather than just sitting here like a lump. It is now 6 o'clock, so that does allow me then to proceed with the public hearing. I declare the statutory public hearing for bylaw 400.79 open at 6 o'clock, and that this hearing is held pursuant to section 7, 606, 640, 674, and 692 of the MGA 2000 as amended, and request the legislative coordinator to confirm the purpose of this public hearing, that the statutory public hearing notice was advertised as required by the city's advertising bylaw, and that written submissions were received but not included in the public hearing agenda package are read into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs and Council. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide an opportunity for the general public to offer input on the proposed amending bylaw 400.79, which received its first reading on July 13th, 2026. Bylaw 400.79 proposes the redistrict of 2.96 hectares of Lot 3, Block 1, Plan 2620638 within the Northeast 20-40-26-W4M from future designation FD District to residential single and semi-detached R2 District. In accordance with the city's advertising bylaw 482 and section 606 of the MGA regarding advertising requirements, a public hearing notice was published in the Lacombe Express on Thursday, July 23rd and Thursday, July 30th, 2026, and in the agenda package. Mayor Hibbs and Council, no written submissions were received, and the city received one registration from members of the public to speak.
Thank you very much. All persons giving oral presentations are to clearly state their name for the record, and presentations are to be brief and to the point. I will also add that they need to be in regards to this item and this item only. The order of the statutory public hearing presentation will be the development officer, a designate, those in favor, those opposed, and then any person deemed to be affected. So I will go ahead then and call the development officer or designate up to the table to make their presentation. And so if you could just turn on the microphone by hitting the bar at the bottom of that, it does move around to make it easier to, the whole unit actually even moves around if it makes it easier for you to talk. And so if you could please introduce yourself and then go ahead, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Courtney Nguyen, and I'm presenting an amendment to the land use bylaw under bylaw 400.79. Today, I'm bringing forward one bylaw amendment for Council's consideration, bylaw 400.79, an amendment to the land use bylaw. On July 13th, Council approved the first reading for bylaw 40079. The subject site is Lot 3, Block 1, Plan 2620638 within the Northeast 20-40-26-W4M. It's approximately 2.96 hectares, is currently undeveloped, and is bounded by Harrington Ridge to the west, Metcalf Way to the south, and 34th Street to the east. The applicant has applied to redistrict the lands from future designation FD to residential, single, and semi-detached, otherwise known as R2, and has indicated an intent to construct semi-detached dwellings. This would increase the potential dwelling unit yield for the area from 16 to 46 units. The city's land use bylaw defines a semi-detached dwelling as a dwelling unit joined side by side to another dwelling unit sharing one common fire-rated wall, with each dwelling unit having at least one separated entrance. The subject area is identified as general residential lands on the future land use concept map of the municipal development plan. The proposed R2 district is consistent with this designation. The redistricting supports the MDP goal of increasing housing diversity across the community, and it contributes to the MDP policy Res 5.4, which requires a minimum of 15.98 units per developable hectare. The Southeast Area Structure Plan provides general guidelines for the orderly development of the plan area, including proposed land uses, densities, and the location of major roads and facilities. The subject lands are designated residential in the plan, so the proposed R2 redistricting aligns with the Southeast Area Structure Plan. The Metcalf Ridge Outline Plan is going concurrently with this application to redesignate the lands from R1 to R2 designation. Bylaw Amendment 400.79 amends the land use bylaw. The subject property is currently designated as FD. This district is intended to provide the continuation of existing and non-permanent land uses until overall plans for future uses are prepared and approved by council. The logical progression for the subject area is to be redistricted to the appropriate land use. The applicant proposes to redistrict the lands to R2. The R2 district introduced under the land use bylaw 400 permits single detached and semi-detached dwellings and duplexes as permitted uses. This enables the proposed housing form while maintaining consistency with the city's current land use bylaw. The applicant completed the required public consultation in accordance with the city's public participation policy at the consult level. Administration mailed a notification to all neighboring property owners within 60 meters of the affected area on June 1st, 2026. Broad public notice was provided through an advertisement in the Lacombe Express and information posted on the city's website. An open house was held on June 23rd, 2026, attended by 2 members of the public. No concerns were received and feedback was positive. Thank you, Mayor Hibbs and Council. In summary, administration recommends that council give second and third reading to bylaw 400.79. I'm here to support council's deliberations.
Very good, thank you. This is an item that will come up later in the agenda, of course, for decision making. This is just the presentation as part of the public hearing. I do not believe that there are any questions. I know you'll be potentially back for the later item. So now I would offer those that wish to speak in favor to come forward. I do have one registration, Mr. Fraser. I'd invite you to take the table. Again, to turn on the microphone, it's just that bar along the bottom, and the whole unit itself is movable to make it comfortable for you to adjust to.
Right.
There we go.
Technology, great. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Glenn Fraser, and I'm the project manager of the Metcalf Ridge subdivision in Eastern Lacombe. I'm here today to speak in support of the bylaw 400.79, the redistricting of 2.9 hectares from future residential to the R2 semi-detached district. The R2 district provides for semi-detached housing, which is an important form of middle housing between single detached homes and higher density multifamily development. It provides additional housing choice, making more efficient use of service land, and can offer more attainable ownership option for families, first-time buyers, and residents looking to downsize. It's also important to recognize that when the original Metcalf Ridge plan was approved, the city did not have the current R2 designation available in the same form as it does today. So as the city's land use, bylaw, and housing policies have evolved, new opportunities have been created to provide a broader range of housing types. This redistricting allows the plan to take advantage of that updated planning framework. This parcel is already allocated or located within the established residential growth area, and the proposed change is modest in scale. It won't change the character of the subdivision and will add some housing diversity while remaining compatible with the surrounding residential neighborhood. For these reasons, we believe the proposed redistricting from future district to R2 is appropriate, represents good planning, and reflects the way the city's residential districts have evolved since the original plan was approved. We respectfully ask that council support the redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will make a second call for anyone who wishes to speak in favor. I'll make a third and final call for those who wish to speak in favor. I do not see any hands. I will call anyone who wishes to speak that is opposed to this item. I'll make a second call for anyone that wishes to speak against. And a third and final call to anyone who wishes to speak against this item. I see none. And finally, any person deemed to be affected, I'll make a first call for anyone that wishes to speak in that capacity. A second call for any of those deemed to be affected. And a third and final call for any of those deemed to be affected. I do not see any one wishing their indication to do that. I think that I will go ahead then and declare the public hearing for bylaw 400.79 closed at 6:12. That is our one and only public hearing this evening, so that now returns us back to our regular agenda. Under request for decision, item 6.2 is the Metcalf Ridge Outline Plan amendment. Yeah, the presenters can take the table again. And once again, just for the public's benefit, if you could introduce yourself and the floor is yours.
Hello again, Mayor Hibbs and Council. I am Courtney Nguyen, and for this presentation, I'm here to present an amendment to the Metcalf Ridge Outline Plan. The purpose of today's item is to present a proposed amendment to the Metcalf Ridge Outline Plan for Council's consideration. GS Communities is proposing to redesignate a portion of the lands within the plan area from future residential detached, otherwise known as R1, to future residential single and semi-detached, otherwise known as R2, and mixed residential, otherwise known as R4. The intent is to support a broader range of housing forms and increase housing diversity, which is consistent with the municipal development plan. A concurrent land use bylaw redistricting bylaw 400.79 is being processed for the proposed R2 parcels identified within Graydon Close. The subject lands are located in Metcalf Ridge in southeast Lacombe within the northeast quarter of 20-40-26 W-W4M. The overall outline plan area is approximately 63.25 hectares. The applicant, GS Communities, is proposing to redesignate a portion of the lands from R1 to R2 and R4. If approved, the amendment increases the total dwelling units in the plan area from 558 to 648, an increase of 90 units, and raises the density from 15.98 to 18.55 units per hectare, which can hold an estimated future population of about 1,570. The applicant will be required to submit subdivision and redistricting applications prior to development. This slide compares the current approved concept plan on the left and the proposed concept plan on the right. The change redesignates portions of R1 lands to R2 and R4. There are no changes to the other land uses within the concept plan. The amendment is simply redistributing residential districts within the plan area to allow a wider range of housing types. The amendment area is identified as general residential lands on the future land use concept map of the municipal development plan, and the proposed R2 and R4 districts are consistent with that designation. The MDP supports increased housing diversity across the community. Policy Res 5.1 encourages a minimum of 35% multi-family residential development, and Policy Res 5.4 requires a minimum of 15.98 units per developable hectare. The proposal achieves 18.55 units per hectare. Map 3 development considerations shows no concern in or around the site, and Map 5 shows a future potential school location to the south, demonstrating the suitability of the site for family-oriented residential development. The proposed amendments meet the policy of the MDP. The Southeast Area Structure Plan provides a general guideline to facilitate the orderly development of the plan area, including the proposed land uses, density of development, and the location of major roads and facilities. The amendment lands are designated residential in the plan, so the proposed amendment aligns with the Southeast ASP. While the ASP establishes the overall land use framework, the outline plan process is intended to provide the more detailed planning and development direction for the area. The amendment area is currently districted as future designation, or FD, in the land use bylaw. The FD district is an interim holding district intended to be redistricted once a clear development direction has been established. The amendment is occurring jointly with the proposed redistricting of the R2 parcels to the residential single and semi-detached R2 under bylaw 400.79. This is consistent with the FD intent, since the necessary planning framework, the Southeast ASP, and the Metcalf Ridge Outline Plan will be in place to support the transition. The lands redesignated to R4 will remain districted as FD at this time, with future redistricting to occur when the development is contemplated and supported by market demand. This slide shows the proposed Table 1.1 land use allocation. The amendment allows for a total of 46 semi-detached units in the R2 district and 227 multi-family units in the R4 district. Overall, the plan area increases from 558 to 648 dwelling units, which can hold an estimated future population about 1,570. The density rises from 15.98 to 18.55 units per hectare. The increase in density is predominantly due to the additional area allocated for R4 lots. Thank you, Mayor Hibbs and Council. In summary, administration recommends that Council adopts the outline plan amendments by resolution. I'm here to support Council's deliberations.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any questions? City Manager Gowdy.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Just to the presenter, you had a slide there that said that the MDP's residential policy 5.4 states a minimum of 15.98 units per hectare. That's actually the previous outline plan density. The minimum requirement is 15 units per hectare. Is that accurate?
I don't know on the top of my head, but I believe that you would have the numbers correct for the MDP.
So just to reiterate that, so 15.98 was the previous outline plan prior to the proposed amendment, which exceeded the minimum of 15. The city's minimum is actually 15, not 16, as essentially 16 as stated here.
Thank you for the attention to detail. Any questions from council in regards to this? Or if not, someone that is prepared to make the motion? Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Thank you to our presenters. I fully support this amendment. I think with the current economic times and affordability issues that everybody's facing, it's harder and harder to get into a single family home. So I think this really reflects the need of the community, and I appreciate everybody that brought this forward, and to Mr. Fraser who spoke on this as well. So thank you. Do we have a motion? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Councillor DeBresser.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I move that council approve the amendment to the Metcalfe Ridge outline plan as presented.
Very good. Just before I call the question, just for clarity, because you'll see this kind of same item sort of repeated. It's because municipalities have different layers of plans and that type of thing. And so sometimes we have to change certain things to reflect how we're making changes. And so it has to be reflected in different documents. So that is essentially what this is addressing. And then we will be making a different decision, related decision. It does seem a bit repetitive, but unfortunately, that's just the way that municipalities have to operate, as it's legislated. So there is a motion on the floor. I see no further comments. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And the screen is green, which means it is unanimous. That then moves us on to item 6.3, which is on the same topic, but now it's a slightly different angle to it. This one does, as opposed to the last item, which was just a single resolution, this does require a number of readings. This is what's coming out of that public hearing that we had earlier. I'd go ahead and give you the floor if you could please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor Hibbs and Council. I'm Senior Development Officer Debbie Hill. I recognize some faces from some of the committees. So as you already heard earlier, the purpose of this is bylaw 400.79, which proposes an amendment to the City of Lacomb's land use bylaw to redistrict 2.96 hectares of Lot 3, Block 1, Plan 2620638 within the Northeast 20-40-26-W4M from future designation FD district to residential single and semi-detached R2 district. The recommended motions are that council give second reading to bylaw 400.79 as presented, and that council resolve to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.79 at the same meeting as the second reading, and that council give third reading to bylaw 400.79 as presented. Thank you.
Very good. Are there any further questions on this item? Does not appear to be so. Does someone wish to make second reading on this? Councillor Span.
I move that council give second reading to bylaw 400.79 as presented.
Very good. Go ahead and call the question. Please vote. That is passed unanimously. In order to have a third reading of the same bylaw at the same meeting, we require a special motion that must be unanimous. If someone's prepared to make that, that would pave the way to allow for third reading. Councillor Dyke-Slegg.
Thank you. I move that council resolve to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.79 at this meeting, same as sorry as the second reading just was approved.
I see no lights on. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. That too is passed unanimously. That does allow us to do third reading if someone's prepared to make that motion. Councillor Proud.
And I move that council give third reading to bylaw 400.79 as presented.
I see no lights on. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that has passed unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to the next item on our council agenda, 6.4, transitional housing development permit application within a direct control district. Who do I have presenting for that? Yes, please, if you could take the table. And again, for the benefit of the public in particular, if you could please introduce yourself.
All right, thank you, Mayor Hibbs, and good evening, Council. My name is Jennifer Kirk. I'm a Senior Development Officer with the City of Lacombe, and sitting beside me at the presenter table is Senior Development Officer Debbie Hill, who is the Planning and Development Acting Manager right now. Okay, so tonight I'm presenting a development permit application for a 12-unit, 3-story transitional housing development to be constructed at 5332 50th Avenue. So we'll start the presentation off with some background information. On May 26, 2025, Council approved the 3 following amendments to facilitate potential development on the subject site. So there's bylaw 405.5, which is a municipal development plan amendment, redesignating the site from general residential lands to multi-residential lands. And there was bylaw 380.1, which is a downtown area redevelopment amendment, permitting a 3-story building within the Old Town Main Street district of the DARP overlay on the subject site only. And then there's bylaw 400.73, which was a land use bylaw amendment redesignating the site from R1, so residential detached district, to the DC5, which is the direct control district. So that was to provide for transitional residential housing, which is a listed discretionary use in the DC5 district. So typically these applications may be presented to the Municipal Planning Commission for a decision, but in accordance with the land use bylaw, all development permits within the DC5 district require the council as the development authority, which is why the application is in front of you tonight. All right, the subject site is located at 5332 50th Avenue. It's situated on the north side of 50th Ave, immediately west of the downtown core. The adjacent parcel to the east is zoned R5, residential multi-unit dwelling district, and contains an apartment housing development. The surrounding parcels are zoned R1, residential detached district, R5, the residential multi-unit dwelling district, and C1, the downtown commercial district. So moving into the land use bylaw review, all development permits are reviewed against the land use bylaw prior to a decision being made. And the reason for that is because the land use bylaw guides land development and identifies the types and forms of development that are appropriate within each land use district. So the proposed use on this site is a 3-story building with 12 self-contained 225-foot square dwelling units, each with a barrier-free washroom, kitchenette, bed, sitting area, and storage space. There will be a shared kitchen, living, dining, and laundry facilities, as well as office space for staff, electronic fob secured entry, accessible design features, and a lift. The development is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases, with phase 1 being the 12-unit apartment building, so this development permit application in front of you tonight, and the future phase 2, which may be forthcoming. So phase 1 is positioned toward the western portion of the parcel to accommodate the future construction of phase 2. And although phase 2 is shown on the site plan, council is not approving that phase as part of your application. So a separate development permit is required for phase 2, and it will be presented to council for a decision. Right, so the land use bylaw's definition of transitional housing means a facility providing supportive temporary living accommodation for persons in need of short-term accommodation as they transition into permanent housing over a period of time. Transitional housing may include additional services such as, but not limited to, administrative offices, meeting rooms, and recreation facilities for use by the residents. The development will be used to provide accommodation for women experiencing difficult life circumstances resulting in housing challenges. So this could include the loss of a partner, medical issues, unemployment, medical health challenges, divorce, or other challenges. The program is not intended for those with visible addiction issues or whose safety is at risk due to domestic violence. These individuals would be referred to specialized support services such as a women's shelter or rehabilitation facility. So if another use was proposed on the site, or if the current use changes or intensifies, it would require a new development permit, which would be in front of council again. The building design, so the property is located in the downtown area redevelopment plan overlay, specifically the Old Town Main Street Residential District. It's a mouthful. Within this overlay, the developments are required to have certain architectural styles, so that being either eclectic craftsman, Edwardian, folk, or Queen Anne. The applicant has chosen the Edwardian style, which is characterized in the land use bylaw by a simple, balanced architectural forms with minimal ornamentation and detailing. The proposal satisfies the land use bylaw's Edwardian design standards. The height, so although the DARP overlay typically limits buildings to 2 stories with an attic, council approved bylaw 380.1 on May 26, 2025, which amended the height requirement to allow for 3 stories or 10 meters in height on this subject site only. The surrounding zoning allows for building heights of between 10 meters and 20 meters. So the R1 building max is 10 meters, R5 is 15.25 meters or 4 stories, and C1 is 20 meters, or if it's within 100 meters of the Flatiron building, then they're limited to 10 meters. Vehicle parking and access. The land use bylaw requires the transitional housing development to provide 16 hard surfaced electrified stalls, 12 for the dwelling units, so that's 1 per unit, 3 guest spaces, and 1 space for staff. The proposed is for 16 stalls, so 12 are on the subject parcel, which will be hard surfaced and electrified, and 4, which are all weather surfaced, are on the applicant's nearby adjacent property at 5346 50th Ave, so just 2 doors down there, where 2 transitional housing units are being operated by the applicant, and the lot is also owned by them. The land use bylaw does allow council to approve off-site parking if it's within 100 meters and secured by restrictive covenant, and that is proposed as development permit condition 4F. Access is exclusively from the rear lane to maintain traffic flow and safety on 50th Avenue, as it's an arterial road. Bicycle parking, so that the proposal is supposed to provide 6 stalls minimum, and they are proposing 10 stalls at the back there, and you can see on the screen. Landscaping, so 25% of the lot is supposed to be landscaped with 8 trees, 16 shrubs, and side yard fencing for privacy of nearby properties. The proposal is for 56% of the lot to be landscaped with 8 trees, 16 shrubs, and solid fencing along both side yards. So from the front of the building to the front of the lot, the fence can only be 3 feet in height. And then from the front of the building back to the rear of the lot, it can be 6 feet in height. Public amenity area. So the land use bylaw requires a total of 133.8 meters squared of public amenity space for this development. That's 11.15 meters squared per unit. This may be indoors, outdoors, or a combination of both. The proposal is for a 17.96 meters squared covered front porch, a 45.74 meters squared shared living area, a 33.77 meters squared shared dining area, and a 37.85 meters squared shared kitchen. Dining and kitchen areas are operational spaces that administration does not count as public amenity space. And the reason for that is that these spaces are required to support the day-to-day operation of the development and do not provide additional recreation or gathering opportunities for the residents. Therefore, the development is considered to propose 63.7 meters squared total of public amenity space, that being the covered front porch and the shared living area. Since 133.8 meters squared is required, development permit condition 4A requires a revised site plan showing a minimum of 70.1 meters squared of outdoor amenity space in the rear yard, which the site is able to accommodate and the applicant has agreed to provide. Acceptable forms include a children's play area, an outdoor barbecue or dining area, a gazebo, or something similar. So that summarizes the land use bylaw review. We'll move on to the municipal development plan review. Development permit applications are also reviewed against the MDP as it establishes policies for the overall direction of land use settlement and patterns and land use policies to meet the community's long-term needs, aspirations, and growth. The proposal aligns with the intent of the MDP by providing a needed housing and supportive service within the community, making efficient use of existing municipal infrastructure, supporting sensitive residential intensification, and contributing to a broader range of housing options. The proposal is consistent with the following MDP policies. Policy GPD 4.H, which directs the council to recognize the changing needs and desires of a growing community and to be receptive to development proposals and concepts that help achieve the city's vision, as well as policy RES 5.5, which states that the city shall promote sensitive infill opportunities and the opportunities to increase density through infill shall be encouraged. All right, so moving on to public engagement, 20 property owners within 60 meters of the subject site were notified of the proposed development. One letter of concern was received. Following tonight's meeting, the public will be informed of council's decision through council minutes, Lacombe Express advertisement, and notification on the city's website. It's important to note that council's decision tonight is final. No appeals can be made. So the comments received have been summarized with full copies provided as Appendix B to the report. We've provided a summary here below. So there were concerns raised about Phase 1's location along the west property line due to potential impacts on the adjacent detached dwellings' views and sunlight, with a suggestion of shifting the building further east. So administration's response is the concerns were shared with the applicant, who advised that Phase 1 is proposed along that west side of the site because it's smaller than Phase 2 and therefore should have less of an impact on them. Another concern was noted regarding additional trees requested along the west side of the building to help screen the development from the adjacent detached dwelling. Administration's response is that the applicant advised that in addition to the proposed opaque fencing along both side property lines, clusters of trees and shrubs are proposed at the northwest and southwest corners of the building to screen the covered front porch and the rear entrance from the adjacent dwelling. And to conclude the presentation, the recommended motion for this application is that council approves the development permit for transitional housing at 5332 50th Avenue, subject to the conditions listed within Appendix C. Thank you, and I'm here to assist council with their deliberations. The applicant and their consultants are also in attendance and are available to answer any questions you may have.
And this item is now open for questions. If anybody on council has questions. Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I think once again, this is a really exciting development for housing needs in Lacombe. My question is, with the majority of amenity space being outdoors and our long winters, is there any concern for not having more indoor space, or is that typical for a development like this?
Thank you to Councillor Goings. Sorry, that's a really good question. So the outdoor space could be used year round if they were to give a gazebo or some sort of a smoking area. But typically, no, the land use bylaw doesn't request year round amenity space.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Span.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Through to Senior Development Officer Kirk. Just looking at the overall plan and where the parking is, of course, that's, I'm sure, something you're prepared to answer. I don't have any issues with what's being proposed. My question is, with the future development, what would happen with parking? It doesn't appear to me that there would be any further opportunities to increase that.
Okay, through the chair to Councillor Span, that is another great question. So because it's a direct control district, you actually can't request a variance. So if the applicant were to move forward with Phase 2, they would require a land use bylaw amendment to reduce the parking requirements and then proceed with a development permit application.
Do we have any further questions? I certainly don't want to hurry anybody. If anybody's prepared to make a motion. Councillor Span.
Through to Development Officer Kirk. Would there be any opportunity within this design to increase what we have proposed for parking? I don't want to slow down the process on any of this, but I do see that as a potential concern with the current design.
Through the chair to Councillor Span. So the council could postpone the application and request revised drawings to demonstrate. However, if we add more parking, it will take away the area for public amenity space. And right now the applicant is a little bit short on this site with the 12 units, and they're accommodating the additional 4 they require on their adjacent lot 2 doors down.
Could you just elaborate on when you say 12 units, like again, specifically what a unit involves?
Yeah. So through the chair to all of council. So the units that they're proposing are 12 self-contained units. So they'll have kitchenettes, little dining areas, a place for a bedroom, and their own private bathrooms. There's an actual shared kitchen in the main area. So the units won't have self-contained kitchens, they're more kitchenettes.
And do you know if there's a concept, and this might be beyond yours, you might need to go to the applicant, but for each of those units, what the occupancy for each of those units would be?
Yeah, I will defer that question to the applicant if you'd like them to come up.
Good evening, Mayor Hibbs and councillors. My name is Tamara Nordoff. I'm one of the founders of the Broomtree Foundation. And I want to take this opportunity again to say thank you so much for all your support this far. We're almost there. But what I wanted to speak on really quickly, because I do have the mic, is in relation to the parking. We've addressed that in terms of we are already successfully running 3 units through Lacombe, 3 independent units. And based on our demographics, the reality is a lot of women that we serve do not have adequate transportation. So we are not even a little bit concerned about that portion of it. However, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Span, but it is important to note that just because there is some nuance there. We just have seen, in fact, most of our women do not have vehicles, which is why that was such a desirable location for us, because the proximity to downtown. The second one was about occupancy in each unit. We have the ability to be pretty flexible in those units. People have in the past made it, they kind of put people in a box in terms of there can be only a certain amount of people in a unit, but the reality is because it's transitional, we're able to be we're able to be a little bit more dynamic and accommodate more. So typically it'll be likely a mom and her 2 kids at max, but honestly, a lot of the demographic that we're serving currently is just a single person at this point. But we do have also, I think that, I don't know if Jen mentioned this, but Officer Kirk, did I say that right? But we also have it in there where we've made on the top floor, or I think maybe 2 of them, where we were able to have an adjacent door into 2 of the units so that we can expand it. So again, we're able to, yes, there are 12 single occupant units, but we're able to pivot and make it a little bit more desirable for a bigger family if needed. So we're really just trying to create a solution for a huge need in the community. And these are the ways that we're doing that. Does that answer your question?
It does answer
Okay.
my question. Yes,
Thanks,
thank you.
Mayor.
I appreciate that. Councillor Proud, did you have a question or?
A comment, actually. Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. And actually for the applicant, I toured a facility similar to this in Edmonton back in June when we had our FCM conference. And really happy for you guys that this is moving forward. Just a comment that stuck out to me when we were doing the tour is there was no televisions in any of the rooms. And they said that brings people out and has the more of that community and that warmth and the use of the shared space, the outdoor space. So just wanted to pass that on because I thought that was really interesting.
Can I just say thank you for that comment, Councillor Proud, because that's exactly what the whole idea of this building is, to drive the social interaction to the main floor, right? We do not want women to be in isolation anymore. We also have our attainable housing coordinator here, Chelsea Felt, and so that's her job, right? We have wraparound services around this building. We've had 100% success rate in all of the units we've run so far over the past 3 years, and you'll find that City of Lacombe also supported us with a $124,000 grant as well. So the support is there. We want to be good neighbors, and we want to do whatever we can to make sure that we are the best neighbors possible. So I really appreciate that, because that is true. And I like that you went and toured it, because this building is actually built similarly, I think 7 to 8 units all over Alberta. And Premier Daniel Smith also did a presentation on one of these. And so it's built to be able to get as much of it, not just an impact, but making sure that we're meeting the energy efficiency and the accessibility and all the criteria. So we really are trying to do this the best way we can. So thank you for that comment.
City Manager Gowdy, I believe you have a question or comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Just a couple of small clarifications. So in Development Officer Kirk's presentation, or in response to a question, she was outlining the components of each suite, what makes up a unit. And you incidentally used the term, and they have a bedroom in there. And so I just wanted to point out, it's not actually a bedroom. It's a single suite. It's an all, so there's not separate bedrooms within there. And then to Councillor Span's question about parking, it sounded like your concern was largely related to the potential for a future addition and fitting parking, accommodating parking for that. The reality is they will not be able to accommodate parking for the second future addition on this site, but they certainly are able to under the land use bylaw by placing a restrictive covenant to sort of like protect parking spots on another site within 100 meters. So even with this first development, 4 of the required parking spots are actually being provided through that designation on a nearby lot rather than on site itself. What the proponent was referring to is that it's unlikely that even those 4 off-site stalls will be needed, but you'll certainly find that out after operating this site for a while. You have a much better idea of it. So I also initially was kind of like, yeah, this phase 1 is one thing, but phase 2 is going to be a challenge. And they're aware of that. I think they'll be looking for opportunities to meet that parking requirement on nearby sites, and likely a land use bylaw amendment as well.
Councillor Span.
To CEO Gowdy, on that point about the restrictive covenants, does that carry through if, say, 30 years from now, a building was to be sold?
Yeah, the way the restrictive covenant is registered is the City of Lacombe is registered as like an interested party. So we would have to be notified if there was any attempt to take the restrictive covenant off of the other site. And obviously we'd
Councillor Dyke-Slag.
All right, well, thank you again for everyone involved in this project. I know we've expressed excitement and appreciation to everyone's work. I just want to reiterate that as well. One of the things though, when the news was shared of the funding and we were going forward with the project, there was a bit of community concern. And I think that concern was tempered by the transparency that we've had and the opportunity to hear our folks. If we only had one letter of concern, that really excites me as well. And I want to give compliments to administration and to the Broom Tree for their sharing of the information and exciting our city for this opportunity of what we're doing. Secondly, I think the people that we're serving, people had maybe questions about some stereotypes around those folks that we're serving. And I think we're serving them well, and the success rate is showing that this is not to be something scared of, it is something to be excited for. So I appreciate that from everybody who's involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dykes-Leg. And while I have the mic again, she's one of the only ones that know this, but we are officially allowed to say that we got a $937,000 grant from the Alberta government. So we can officially say that. And that is hugely because of support from the previous council and the community members, because even just the commitment that's been shown from the Affordable Housing Committee through the 124,000, you can only imagine that just builds the momentum. So we can't thank you guys enough.
Just in a final comment, I do want to commend the neighbors also for really embracing the, as was referenced, one letter of some concern, that those concerns were addressed. But I really do appreciate that. Maybe it comes out of the transparency, but that does speak to something, because when I think this was first initially proposed back in the day, there was some fears, and I get it. Like, words like transitional sound a bit scary, and so just kudos to the Broom Tree and the neighbors, I have to say. That does bring us to either further questions or if someone is prepared to make a motion. Councillor Dykes-Leg.
I'm pleased to make the motion that council approve the development permit for transitional housing at 5332 50th Avenue, subject to the conditions listed in Appendix C.
I see no further lights. That is the recommended motion. I will go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. Are we requiring a recess? All right. Call a recess of 10 minutes or just under 10 minutes. If we could resume business at 7 p.m., please. So we'll resume our business. Councillor Span will join us momentarily, I'm sure. We will take next on our agenda, 6.5 is the 49C Pedestrian Plaza Marketing Name Selection. Who do we have to bring us through this item? Director Hackett.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Hibbs and members of council. It's my pleasure tonight to present on some marketing name choices for 49C Pedestrian Plaza. And I need the slide clicker. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Sorry about that. So in January of this year, the Downtown Area Redevelopment Plan, or the DARP Committee, was tasked by Council to come up with a list of potential marketing names for the 49C Pedestrian Plaza area. And so DARP has provided 4 options, and Council is being asked tonight to review those options and provide direction for next steps. So just as a refresher, this is the 49C Plaza area located in downtown. It is, of course, right adjacent to the Flatiron Building. And the plaza, as it appears today, was constructed or completed construction in 2025. It was converted at that time to a one-way street, and amenities were added such as benches, planter boxes, and an expanded sidewalk. And then tent was an opportunity to host events and create a more walkable area right in the downtown. This is a photo taken by a drone, actually, of the area during an event, just so you can see the area that we're referring to. So as the DARP committee was discussing some of the successes in the completion of that project and with some interest in holding events there, they felt that a marketing or branding name for the area would be something that would draw positive attention. And so they did ask Council if they could come up with some alternatives. Council responded, as I mentioned, in January, asking DARP to do that. And so what is a marketing name? Well, a marketing name is about place branding or easy recognition of an area. It is separate from the official addressing system, so we're not talking tonight about re-addressing those properties or giving them a different legal street name. That's separate. The road name will remain 49C Avenue. The historic name is Allen Avenue, and both of those are on the street sign at this time. Those will remain as is. This is just about a marketing or placemaking initiative. And the intent behind creating this marketing name is to make the location more memorable to the public, to create, as I said, a sense of place, enhance recognition of the area, support a theme, an overall theme of the area, and to distinguish that there are some pedestrian spots from the actual road. And an example that the DARP committee talked about, for example, in Edmonton is the ICE district. And so there are roads that have legal street names, but the ICE district is kind of a sense of place. And when you hear about that, you kind of know the theme for the area is hockey and ice in the arena. So the suggested choices put forward by the DARP committee in no particular order are the Flatiron Square, Lacour Square, Flatiron Junction, or Flatiron Plaza. And the DARP committee felt that each of these names does reflect the history of downtown or the historic downtown location. It does show that it is in the core, or links to the fact that it is the core or the heart of the downtown. 3 have incorporated the Flatiron into the name due to the prominence of that building and the historical significance of the building. And 1 has cour, which is heart in French, as the heart of downtown, but to distinguish itself from the heart art piece located, or the heart that lights up in the Lacombe Park. So some considerations for council tonight as we looked at this. The selection of a marketing name for the 49C Pedestrian Plaza, if council chose to go forward with that, would be a first for downtown. There isn't another marketing name in our city. And so administration is suggesting that the 4 choices perhaps be shortlisted to 1 or 2 choices, and that some additional research and consultation be conducted on those shortlisted names before a final decision is made or before a final recommendation is considered. Once the names are shortlisted, if council chose to go this way, we could bring back that report in Q1 of 2027. And the reason I'm suggesting that is council may recall that there is a 1-year trial period of events being conducted on 49C Avenue, and that report is scheduled to come back in Q1 of 2027. So the timing would align well. And that report on the marketing name could include some research findings of are there any other similarly named areas, a little bit of stakeholder feedback, what do some of the stakeholders think of the name, how does it play out, any concerns in that way. And so tonight, the recommendation is that council shortlist from the following potential marketing names for the 49C Pedestrian Plaza, and directs administration to conduct additional research and focus stakeholder consultation and return to council in Q1 2027 with the requested information for the shortlisted name or names, and the 4 choices are presented on the screen. Thank you. And administration is here to support your deliberations.
Any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Contenti.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Through Director Hackett. I'm just wondering why it has to be drug out so long for a name for a plaza or a junction or whatever. Like we're talking Q1 27. Is it that important to get that much consultation on a name of a renaming of a street? Just wondering.
Through Mayor Hibbs to Councillor Contenti, certainly council could make a decision tonight. There is not a particular reason. I'm not trying to drag it out. The timing works well with the report coming back in Q1 on the events, and we are already at the end of August. So just thinking of how long it might take to consult with some of the property owners, a month or 2. And so for administratively, Q1 made sense, but if council would like to make a decision tonight, that is certainly an option that you have on that as well. And I think the DARP committee is putting those 4 names. They were all supported. So I feel like the DARP committee would agree to any one of those names. Thank you.
Just follow up. Yes.
Just turn your microphone on, please, again.
Had it on there for a second. Yeah, so I mean, there's only one different name. The other's it's either a square, a junction, or a plaza. And one other name, the Heart, that really, to me, doesn't seem to fit that one. But so it's not as if there's like 4 distinct things. So I'd just like to make the decision tonight and be done with it.
Councillor Dykeslag.
I also have no problem making the decision tonight. I just don't know if we're all gravitating to the same word. If we were all gravitating to the same word, I think a decision as we represent our constituents might be a decision we can make tonight. If we're not gravitating to the same word or same naming, then we do need to consult, I think, because we're not in alignment. So I'm throwing out there, I'm gravitating to Flatiron Plaza. That would be my number 1 choice. And I'm not sure what my other fellow councillors are thinking. And maybe that helps us with moving forward on our discussion. If we're fairly consistent, we could maybe make the decision tonight. If we're not, I'd say we do want to shortlist to 2 and let the DARP committee and administration do further research.
Councillor Span.
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Dykeslag on if we're gravitating towards the same name, then we don't need further consultation. The one that stuck out to me was the junction, just with the train in the area, and that's always been a big part of Lacombe. So that was the part that was catching my eye. As far as a plaza goes, the reason why I didn't really gravitate towards that one was just because it's not really a plaza, if you look at what the definition of a plaza is. But yeah, I would agree that if we can come together on a decision here, then let's just move ahead.
Anyone else willing to
Yeah.
weigh in? Councillor DeBresser.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I was a Flatiron Plaza supportee, but maybe I'll have to rethink that. My question is, you mentioned the historic name of Allen Avenue. Can you elaborate where that came from? Maybe you can't, maybe it wasn't in there, but it kind of got overshadowed, even though it's the unofficial name, but it's got some historic references.
Thank you through Mayor Hibbs to Councillor DeBresser. The DARP committee asked that same question, and so I'm trying to recall the discussion there, but I believe Mr. Allen was related to the survey company originally that laid out the pattern of the streets in downtown Lacombe, and so many of the early streets were named after either railway employees or surveyors or early workers in the area. And I believe that this was a survey company employee.
Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I kind of agree with the conversation around the table. I think we can maybe come up with either a short list or decision pretty quickly. I'm in favor of anything that includes Flatiron. I think that makes the most sense. Flatiron Junction sounds like a really cool band name to me, but I do appreciate the train, how that lines up with the trains in the area as well. So Flatiron Square and Flatiron Plaza were my top two favorites, but Junction could be included as well. So that's my thought there.
I'll just weigh in. While I appreciate the liqueur, of course, Lacombe, but we don't really have a particularly strong French like presence in this community. So I don't think that really resonates as strongly as it would be if our demographics were slightly different. I'm also in favor probably of the Flatiron Junction. I think that's a little bit unique, and I did also agree that I liked the train sort of reference. So if I were to pick one, I don't have a problem with us if we're able to decide tonight or shortlist to maybe 2 items. I think it would be fun, frankly, to allow the public to be able to have a little bit of a say in this, and we haven't really promoted it as such because it was being proposed for 2027. So I wonder if perhaps council would be open to the concept of even just waiting, even just another meeting, just so that people can have a say and weigh into the item. It's fun. We're in the process of naming a Zamboni. Why not the square as well? So just my thoughts on that. Anything else? Councillor Span.
Yeah, my preference would be then to, rather than push this off till Q1 of 2027, just to maybe table it to our next meeting. It's great to hear from the other councillors and kind of where you sit on some of these different names as well. So.
Councillor Contenti.
Yes, thank you. So what are we going to do between this meeting and next meeting? Are you putting it out on, say, name the street now like we did the Zamboni from now till the next meeting? What's going to change? What's going to happen from now to then to get something different? Because we already said to DARP, give us some names. They brought us some names. So now we're going to go back and do something different. So
It does suggest that there's going to be additional research and focused stakeholder consultation. So to my mind, that includes the public. Councillor Dykeslag.
I was just going to say that I'd like to move that council shortlist the following potential marketing names for the 49C pedestrian plaza and direct administration to conduct additional research and focus stakeholder consultation and return to council. I'm willing to wait till Q1 2027. If you want to amend this motion after, you can. And I request that we use the 2 shortlisted names, Flatiron Plaza and Flatiron Junction.
All right, that is the motion on the floor. As was mentioned, it can be amended, or we can proceed on the motion that is on the floor. I'll wait to see any lights. I'm not seeing any lights, so that is the motion on the floor. I will accept that. With no lights coming on, I'll go ahead and call the question as is the recommended motion. Please proceed to vote. Sorry, there was a slight amendment. We removed two names, but technology is just keeping up. Sorry. And that is correct. The Flatiron Junction and Flatiron Plaza are the two selected. All understanding and agreeing for that clarification, please proceed to vote. That is passed with a vote of 6-1 with Councillor Contenti voting opposed. That then brings us to our next item on the agenda, 6.6, North Red Deer River Water Services Commission bylaw and membership agreement. You will recall this was the subject of our presentation earlier. And who will be leading us through this item? City Manager Gowdy.
Thank you. Just to point out, obviously Director Thompson is the expert when it comes to this regional water commission work, but it would put him in a pretty weird spot to be now presenting
On the
behalf
other
of
side,
both.
yes.
So that's why I'm taking this file. So thanks for your work on this, of course, and I do want to acknowledge you're the expert in this. So originally it was going to be a more complicated presentation because we did have some concerns around that director piece, but it's been resolved, and it sounds like actually a lot of the other members are in alignment with proceeding as is. So we actually, from the city's perspective, have no remaining concerns. The group has been really responsive that's been drafting it. And they they met with us in person for actually several hours to go through every agreement and all of the comments. And so I think that this is something, it's a natural step to, after just over 20 years now, to look at changing the structure of the agreements and the bylaws specifically. Going from 1 to 3 makes a lot of sense. When you're setting up these commissions, it's really about speed and getting kind of like the rails in place that everyone will agree to it, and then being responsive when you get funding and trying to construct it as you go. So it's nice to see it reaching this next level of maturity, and it certainly paves the way for, I think, a really important project that's been contemplated for, well, since the commission was formed. Originally, water allocations reflected the inclusion of these First Nations, but it actually just never got across the finish line. So to see that moving ahead potentially in the next year is really exciting. I would be happy to answer any questions about the specific changes that have been made. Obviously not going through the same detail as Richard and Dylan did earlier.
Councillor Dyke-Slyke.
Only one thing kind of came up in the presentation, and that was regarding membership. And membership requirements, one of the ways to be asked to leave the membership was if it was persistent, not meeting your financial responsibility. The word was persistent in there. If you have persistently not met your financial obligations, then you would be discontinued from membership. What does persistent mean? Like, does it mean they don't pay for months, years, decades? Like, what is that? I didn't quite understand what the guidelines would be around getting removed from the commission.
City Manager Gowdy.
Yeah, so thank you. There's, it's an escalating clause. So they have to miss, there's certain sort of like significant breaches that could occur, say non-payment, within, I think it's a 60-day period. If you have 2 subsequent breaches.
Okay.
Then it escalates to the board and there's like a notice of correction to get to the spot where we're actually removing someone from the commission. It would be multiple years before you got there. And it's likely that such a situation would result in the member leaving, establishing a customer relationship with the commission. It would be some governance issue more than anything. Once communities join the water commission, it's foreseen that they'll never get their water source anywhere else in the foreseeable future. It's not really there'd be other levels of government involved likely as well, potentially the AUC to get involved in such a dispute. And there's some precedence for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. To City Manager Gowdy. Potentially a question that I should have asked during the presentation, but I was just thinking about it now. With the move away from individual agreements to broad bylaws, the City of Lacombe has the biggest allotment with the members. Does that open us up to any potential risk moving away from individual agreements to bylaws?
No, the allotment stays the same. So the city has the largest share of allotment. And the town of Blackfalds actually, that's like a live issue that is going to come up over the next few years here, is that because of the growth rate of the town of Blackfalds, they actually are foreseeably, that's not imminent or anything, but they're going to use up their allocation and reach the limit. It's not the functional limit. There's lots of capacity left in the pipe itself in the system, but their legal limit will be hit. And so they would like to look at that allocation to make sure there's water suitably available for them as they reach that growth limit. There's obvious trade-offs that other members would say, well, maybe I have less. The City of Lacombe is likely to be the one to give up some of that allocation because we haven't grown at the same rate as we were the biggest member. We haven't grown at the same rate as the City of Blackfalds or the town of Blackfalds, and therefore we would be the obvious ones. And so it would not impact us as in constrain our growth in any way. There's actually not really a growth constraint for any of the member communities in reality. But the argument would be that the City of Lacombe would say, well, we only got 2/3 funding when we built this thing. We took out a loan. The city paid the lion's share of the debenture, because the town of Lacombe actually at the time, because we were protecting our allocation. So we should then get some true up, some recognition of that initial contribution to trade allocation. And that's some of the work that the commission is actually looking to bring on some support, if I understand from today's meeting, to look at how that can be done in a fair way. I mean, it's two municipalities, so nobody's trying to, get a win out of it, but it's about fairness for the ratepayers, of course.
That answered a lot. Thank you so much.
One question about, members. So let's say that there's potentially an significant industrial user of water being proposed that you potentially build a spur line to achieve. So you're not making the system longer, you're now expanding it in a different direction. How is that exactly contemplated? Would that be considered then under, for example, the county? If it was out in the county, would that just be part of them as a member, or how does that look? City Manager Gowdy.
Yeah, thank you. We have looked at that kind of situation in the past, and essentially they would not be eligible for membership. A large industrial customer, they would be treated as a customer, but their rates actually would be developed under the same model largely, but they wouldn't have voting rights or any of those rights. They wouldn't have decision-making authority. They would count towards the member within whose jurisdiction they lie,
Sure.
unless there was some separate agreement from the members about that particular customer. So in your example, if it was someone in Lacombe County, a major industrial user, that would count towards Lacombe County's allocation. And I should, not to complicate things, this is just for the Water Commission. On the Regional Wastewater Commission, it's a little bit of a different deal where it's just we will provide service as it is required basis. It's only within, well, with an asterisk. The county has earmarked some allocation, but it's only in the Water Commission that there's this hard line allocation issue.
Very good. I appreciate that. Councillor Span?
Question that came to my mind during the presentation, it didn't really have it formulated well at that point, was that 13 million meters cubed is currently approved to divert from the Red Deer River. Currently, we've got 9.6 million allocated. Is there any concern with taking on more members or with these municipalities growing that will reach that capacity of 13 million?
City Manager Gowdy.
The short answer is no. The difference from the current allocations, that's the license allocations, the 9 million that you referred to. So it's not that there's actually 9 million cubic meters being used annually. It's that there's room for the current members to grow up to that. The additional cubic meters, 5 or so there, were actually originally allocated to the commission in contemplation of the First Nations being part of the commission. And then it was reviewed about 8 years ago. Do you recall that, when the water license allocations were reviewed and defended 5 years ago? And it was confirmed at that time that this allocation that was earmarked to the commission is really for these First Nations joining. It's always been envisioned. That's how the system was envisioned from the beginning. It just never came together for various reasons in 2005/6.
Director Thompson?
I just want to put a asterisk on or a emphasis on the point, because I think it is an important one for municipalities when they're talking about water allocation. Commission's been in operation for 20 years and we're right around 3 million cubic meters annually combined. And so we can grow into 9 within our existing licensed allocation. Plus there's an additional amount that is currently earmarked for future First Nations expansion. So there's a lot of runway before we are truly concerned from a license perspective that we're going to hit that capacity.
Thank you very much for that.
Any more questions, or perhaps somebody willing to make a motion? Councillor Proud.
I sit on this committee, so I'm willing to make the motion. I also feel that Lacombe's interests have been well represented and that the bylaws have been thoroughly reviewed by legal counsel, and that each member community has had the opportunity to weigh in and has done so. So I would say that council endorse, or I move that council endorse the proposed replacement of the North Red Deer River Water Services Commission Bylaw 1 with the governance, terms of service, and operations bylaw together with the revised membership agreement.
Okay. Yep. We'll just hang on a moment. Okay, I see no further lights, so we'll be ready to call the question in one moment. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. Oh, you can't vote yet. You're not started. For future reference for council at large, if things like that happen where you need to get my attention because you need to have a recess, or in the case of technology failing, you can call a point of privilege is what would be, I think, the most appropriate. And that would just get my attention. It can interrupt pretty much anything. And you will let me know that it's too cold, too hot, that you need a break, that your equipment has failed, whatever the case may be. Yeah, so obviously it's rarely used, so that's why I thought I'd just point it out, so you don't have to feel uncomfortable about doing that. It is within your right. It's called a point of privilege for a reason. You do have that privilege to be able to enact your duties the way that you see fit. Gotta love technology. It sure does keep things really nice usually, but then of course makes things a little bit more exciting sometimes too. There we go. The motion is now before you, so I'll go ahead and call a question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously because I know how I voted. So there we go, green screen. That moves us on then in our agenda to 6.7, 2026 Q2 operating variance report. Welcome to the presenter table. And again, for the public's benefit, if you could introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I'm Annette Gordon. I'm the Senior Manager of Financial Services. Good evening, Mayor Hibbs and Council. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with financial information for the second quarter of the year, covering the period from January 1st to June 30th, 2026. In general, we would expect revenues and expenses to be approximately around 50% of the annual budget by the end of June. However, some revenues and expenses occur at different times throughout the year. It's important not to assume that the current variances will continue throughout the remaining of the year. For example, taxation revenue is recorded in June, which is a large percentage of the city's revenue, but expenses are generally more uniform throughout the year. Upon review, nothing stood out as a concern. However, there are two large substantial items that have an impact on our budget. The first one is the repayment of debt, which we spoke about in Q1. Council approved the debt repayment in November of 2025. However, due to lenders' approval of the debt, it wasn't completed until the first quarter of 2026. Excluding debt repayment, expenses would have been a positive surplus at $137,000. The second item is the increase in the school requisition from the province. The province issued a letter of intent on March 24th, 2026, stating that for the 2026, their intention was to increase the school requisitions. We received this letter after our budget was finalized, but before the property tax bylaw was drafted and passed. For actual costs, we have levied out the additional requisition amounts from the letter of intent. On the expense side, the letter of intent has not been formalized by the Alberta government, and we have not been invoiced yet. Therefore, we are on budget on the expense side for Q2 reporting. However, by the end of the year, they should match. Now on to the details of variance within the budget, starting with revenues. Overall, revenue was over budget by 2.6 million. However, removing the extra school requisition, it would have been 1.7 million. Items that have stood out are the goods and service revenue is approximately 693,000 over budget, mainly due to 3 items: security clearance over budget by 65,000, building and rental and leases over budget by 377,000, and we have additional unbudgeted revenue of 221,000 for the sale of municipal land. Utility revenues were lower than expected as there's been less water being used by the community. This is under budget by approximately 65,000, which is offset by reduced water purchasing costs. Grant revenue is approximately 174,000 below budget. The variance is primarily related to a grant that was placed in deferred revenue and a timing of receiving our grants. At this point in time, we expect grant revenue to be on budget by the end of the year. Interest and penalties revenue is approximately 39,000 above budget. Tax penalty revenue is higher than expected because the largest annual tax penalty is applied in January and June, which this reporting period covers. And investment interest is also above budget. Local agencies revenue is over budget by $802,000. The city received several full intermunicipal cost sharing funding in Q2 that was budgeted for in Q3. So Q3, we should see these on target. Other revenue sources, other was over budget by $390,000. This was mainly due to proceeds from the sale of capital assets through 2 different auctions held during the Q1 and then another in the Q2. Once accounting adjustments are completed, the overall financial impact of these sales is expected to be much smaller. We already discussed taxation, but all taxation revenue has been received with the exception of supplementary taxes, which will be levied in December. There is a large difference from budget to actual, as already mentioned. Q2 is over budget by 928,000, and this is the provincial school requisition. And the overall budget is 940,000, and we are under budget by 20K due to council's resolution to change the property tax bylaw and other small differences. So that's on the collection of taxes, that's 20,000 over budget, and then under budget, and then the school requisition makes up the large majority of that over budget. By the end of the year, the increased revenue is expected to be offset by the related increase in the provincial requisitions. Moving on to expenses, the overall expenses were approximately 560,000 above budget, but adjusting for the debt, it would have been 307,000 below budget. I'll go into each major category of expenses, focusing on the largest variances. Funding to others in total is 159,000 under budget. These are payments related to our communities, to our commissions, library, FCSS, and other agreements such as our mutual aid agreement with fire. The surplus is mostly a timing difference for a payment at the beginning of July that was budgeted for the end of June. The commission fees are also under budget by 24,000, which I spoke of earlier on the other side, and this is offset by revenue. Goods and service expenses are approximately 330,000 below budget. 200,000 is due to expenses for a grant that we budgeted in Q2 that we received in June, but expenses have not all yet been spent. There's also another 56,000 of unspent in chemicals, but most of this surplus has already been spent at the beginning of Q3, and other small variances outlined in Appendix B. Personnel costs are approximately 80,000 below budget. This is very close to the budget, sitting at 0.8%. Administration recommends that council acknowledge the 2026 Q2 financial reporting as information. Thank you for your time, and administration is here to support council's deliberation.
Any questions on this item? Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Span.
Yeah, through Mayor Hibbs to Senior Manager Gordon. My question just, it's likely just for clarification. Obviously with the debt, the principal payment on the debt happening in 2026 versus 2025, that increases the debt principal payment on line 9, I believe, of page 306. My question is more to do with line 8, where our debt interest is higher than what is expected. Is that just to do with penalties that were incurred when we paid off that debt early?
Yeah, so there was both like a penalty for paying it earlier, and then we had to pay a portion as well for some of the interest per the agreement. I believe it was 3 months.
Any other questions or someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor DeBresser.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hibbs. My question was just regarding the overage. Well, it's not really an overage of the school requisition taxes. When we passed the property tax rate bylaw, essentially that 27 million was approved in the bylaw. However, it hasn't flowed through to our approved budget this year, given the outage of what we're seeing here. So my question is around, should have we amended the 2026 budget by the property tax rate requisition amount at that time when we did approve the bylaw? To me, it shouldn't be out. We approved a bylaw to requisition $27 million. Our budget doesn't reflect that in these documents, giving the, not illusion, giving the, I'm not sure what word I'm looking at, giving the ability to kind of say there's an outage, but really we've already approved a bylaw to requisition the $27 million. I know that's going to get paid over the period of the year. It was just in these documents. We're kind of out a little bit, but we're not out, if that makes sense. I can't phrase it any better than that. So just my comment there, whether you need an additional motion to approve the taxation and granting the lieu up to 27,355 to reflect the actual budget. So it's really not an outage in my mind. It's just reflected in your documents here as an outage. But I'm okay with the Q2 report, but just process-wise, my mind's not computing.
Any comment on that from administration? Director Thompson.
Thank you. We'll have to follow up with you on that. I believe we passed the necessary resolutions to support a requisition at the time, like that during that meeting. We'll just double check after and come back if there's a necessary resolution. But it's also kind of an artifact of the system where just the budget that's passed in the fall is kind of the baseline from which we're measuring variances. And so mid-year approvals are noted, but they're not necessarily like fully adjusted in the system itself. So there could be that as well.
Perhaps somebody's prepared to make that motion. Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I move that council acknowledge receipt of the 2026 Q2 operating variance report as information.
No further lights. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. This brings us to our final item under request for decision, 6.8, General Engineering Services Agreement. I see we have our presenter coming to the table right now. Just go ahead and please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs, and good evening, members of council. My name is Amber Mitchell, and I'm the Manager of Engineering Services for the City of Lacombe. And tonight, I'm presenting council with the results of the procurement process for a general engineering consultant for the City of Lacombe. The city's general engineering consultant is a firm that provides multidisciplinary engineering services on an as-required basis, which include, but are not limited to, project planning, design, tendering, construction management, development reviews, regulatory compliance, and infrastructure analysis. The city follows a competitive procurement process for the general engineering services agreement approximately every 6 years, consisting of an initial 3-year term with an optional 3-year extension based on performance. This procurement was completed using a 2-stage process and was publicly advertised through Alberta Purchasing Connection and on the city's website. First, a request for qualifications was issued to evaluate each firm's experience, capacity, technical expertise, and municipal engineering background. 4 submissions were received and 3 firms were shortlisted. These included Stantec, WSP, and MPE. The shortlisted firms then advanced to a request for proposal stage where they were asked to prepare proposals based on representative capital works program assignments reflective of Lacomb's typical engineering needs. This year, one of the proposals focused on a new initiative by the city to complete the pre-design upfront for the next 3 years of capital works. Under our current year-by-year approach, capital budgets are often based on the best available information at the time, with investigations and design occurring after the budget has been approved. Over the last several years, engineering services has run into challenges delivering the capital works program related to cross-asset coordinations between roads and deep utilities, and this is where the scope is expanded to cover deep utilities that maybe weren't initially considered or apparent during the budget stage. Cost escalation due to emerging information that impacts scope and schedule. Shallow utility relocations, which require a minimum under our franchise agreements, a minimum of 1 year's notice, but we have found are frequently extending into the 2nd year. Alternative servicing options that require council input, such as the challenges that we discussed with you earlier this year regarding 58th Street. And landowner negotiations where backsloping or right-of-way agreements are required. We believe moving to a multi-year approach will allow surveys, CCTV inspections, geotechnical investigations, utility coordination, and other preliminary work to be completed earlier, providing council with better developed project scopes and cost estimates while reducing the risk of significant changes after tenders close. In addition, it will provide opportunities to evaluate related improvements such as roadway lighting, parking, sidewalks and trails, and other community infrastructure improvements or enhancements well in advance of the annual budget process. In evaluating the proposals from our consultants, administration was looking for a consultant that clearly understood our challenges and presented solutions to address these issues. The proposals were evaluated using a comprehensive scoring system that considered project understanding, methodology, project team, interview performance, cost, and a carry forward score from the first part of the procurement process, the request for qualifications. Interviews were conducted with all 3 shortlisted proponents following proposal submissions. The evaluation process focused on identifying the consultant that offered the best overall value to the city, balancing technical expertise, service delivery capabilities, project team strength, and cost, rather than selecting solely based on price alone. Based on the final evaluation results, Stantec achieved the highest overall score at 90.5 points and was determined to provide the best value and the strongest fit for the city's operational capital planning and infrastructure needs. And we do have a representative from Stantec, our lead professional on our file here today, Martine Francis. The General Engineering Service Agreement will establish the terms and rates under which Stantec may be retained, but it will not commit the city to having a minimum volume of work. Individual assignments will still be authorized within council-approved operating and capital budgets. Engineering costs associated with specific projects will continue to be identified through the applicable annual budget and project approval process. I also want to highlight that even with the appointment of a general engineering consultant, the city retains the flexibility to competitively procure specialized engineering services from other firms when we determine that doing so will provide specific expertise, improve service, or better overall value. This provides other firms with the opportunity to develop experience and familiarity with city projects. And recent examples of doing such include a project we have going on right now, the Highway 12 and 2A intersection conceptual design, where you have Investec Consulting leading it, the State of Asset Management Review, which was completed by Urban Systems, the fire station, where we have ACI Architects Incorporated, the Public Works Building, which was led by Collier project leaders, the Fairview Cemetery expansion last year by Lees and Associates, and the Airport Master Plan, which is also underway right now by HM Aero Aviation Consulting. So in conclusion, administration recommends that council authorize entering into a 3-year agreement with Stantec Consulting for the provision of general engineering services with the option to extend the agreement for an additional 3 years, subject to satisfactory performance. And I am happy to support council in their deliberations.
Very good, thank you. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Contenti.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hibbs. To Senior Manager Mitchell. I got a few questions actually, and just some reiterating some of the thoughts that you put out. So we're using this general service to supplement the engineering services we have within the city.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
And a lot of this is going to be for pre-construction projects, like having to look at things before to kind of estimate what some of the costs may happen when we go out to tender for a project.
That will be the first part. So typically our engineering consultant helps run our capital works program. So the city staff, we do a lot of the project development, but the detailed design is actually, has historically always been consultants. I'll look to CAO Gowdy, who's been here for the last 20 years. He's nodding his head. So we've always used consultants to do the detailed design for our projects. Pre-design, now that we're kind of working with asset management and we're pulling everything together, we have a really good picture of what's happening with our roads. We have a less good picture of what's happening with our sewer, our sanitary, and our storm systems. And so we select our projects based on the roads that we intend to do that year. And then we go in, we do some underground investigations. Now, if we were to do that for the whole city, we'd spend over $1 million taking a snapshot of the utilities underneath all the city streets. That would be good for about 3 to 5 years. So it's just not a great use of funds because obviously they're a picture in time. And so what we do is we select the projects based on the roads, and then we go in and we do the evaluations. Sometimes I have a pretty good idea of what we're going to find based on the age of the infrastructure, the type of the infrastructure. Sometimes we find some real surprises. And so when I bring projects to you guys during budget, some of that work may have been done, but not to the degree that I'm proposing with this new standard. And so what our new general engineering consultant will be working with us on is looking at the next 3 years. And then if we do see something that's a surprise or something that will require additional work, we can move it further in the program to year 3 or year 4 even, and move a more simple project forward. And so it gives us a little bit more flexibility. So this year when we had 58th Street kind of put on pause because when we got into it, it just didn't make sense to do it this year. We would have a couple other projects in the queue that are already lined up and ready to go. And we would have some confidence that we could slide something else in and push that project out for, 5 or 10 years or whatever the recommended length is. So that's kind of the idea behind it. So next year's capital works program, I'm calling it simplistic. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's mostly going to be paving projects. We're not going to do a lot of deep utilities. Those are complex. And we're going to focus our planning on what we're going to do for the next 3 years. We're going to look at more CCTV than we typically look at. We're going to look at more geotechnical reports than we typically look at. And we're going to do the pre-design and we're going to say, hey, on this road, are we just doing pavement or are we doing pavement, water, and sewer? Are we considering lighting? Are we widening the sidewalk? What other improvements might we require on this road? And get that scope kind of firmed up so that we know where it makes sense to place it in the next 3 years. Does that answer your question?
Oh, that answers a whole lot of questions. Just follow up.
Absolutely.
So I understand that part. So how does it work as far as dollar value? Are they to have to meet a minimum amount per month, per year for their services? Do we just, okay, we need you for a week, we need you for a month? How does that work?
That's a great question. So for each project, we actually get a quote up front. They look at it, we tell them what the scope is, and they'll provide us with the number of hours and the price that it will take to do that work. And so that's what we've done. We've laid out what this 3-year plan, this pre-design is going to look like, all 3 firms provided us pricing for what that scope would look like. And that was part of the evaluation. When we move to the next set of design, it will be with our general engineer. So if awarded to Stantec, it would be, we would go straight to Stantec and we just say, give us the price for the detailed design of this scope. And we wouldn't go out to all the other consultants for that one. So on limited projects, we're just going to one consultant for the detailed design for the next 3 years.
Okay, and is there a maximum dollar amount where you say, okay, we need to go out to tender?
There's not really a maximum dollar amount because obviously the budget, depending on what projects you have, it's often a percentage of construction. But if we do feel like they're not aligning with industry standards, we reserve the right to go out to a competitive tender. Yes.
Anything further, Councillor Contenti?
I think that's it for now. I reserve the right to ask another question.
Very good. Councillor Span.
Through Mayor Hibbs to Manager Mitchell. If we were to see a scenario like that where we feel the need to, like, things aren't lining up with industry standard, is there a penalty that we incur for doing that?
To Councillor Span, through Mayor Hibbs, no, there's no penalty. This contract allows us to go to them first, but it also allows us to go to the market for any project we would like to go out to.
City Manager Gowdy.
So generally, they've been very competitive pricing wise because they're giving you the hourly rates. Where we have gone out to other firms and there's examples given, it's actually fairly common that we will say, well, actually, this is a specialized piece of work. You guys are great generalists for us, but maybe it's capacity or maybe it's an existing background that a particular company has. And so there's a list of 6 recent examples here where we've done just that, where we say, this isn't really a great fit for this group. We'll go out to market, and sometimes actually we find they are the best fit out there, but often there's other groups that we have partnerships with as well. So the pricing has always been really competitive. It's about what specialized services you need for a particular project that leads us more often to go to a different engineer, and there's no penalty of any kind.
Councillor Span, did you have anything additional?
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it a little bit, just because it sounds to me like we haven't had a contract with a general engineering service before. And I'm curious what the advantages to the city are of having that type of agreement in place.
City Manager Gowdy.
Maybe we missed communicating that more explicitly. We've had a general engineering services contract continuously for well beyond my time here. So the city's always had its own engineering staff, but they're like the generalists of generalists. And so we're really trying to cover a lot of different things. And you put it well, you're designing the project, but you're not doing the design. To do that and carry the insurance and the required software packages to actually do in-house design just isn't feasible for small or even mid-sized municipalities. So this continues actually a long-standing relationship and tradition here at the city. The advantage is particularly for things like a multi-year capital project, the continuity of having the same experts involved throughout the project life, both design, construction, post-construction, is really beneficial. And we've also seen a lot of benefit over the years of having long-standing partners who know the municipality's infrastructure. At times, I mean, there are people in industry that have worked with the city of and town of Lacombe in an engineering capacity for longer than I've been here. And so to maintain that knowledge, sometimes it's best to go with that long-standing partner.
Councillor De Bresser.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Yeah, Councillor Span took two questions of mine tonight. First on the parking, the second phase of the parking early tonight. And the second one was, how long has Stantec been our general engineering?
We've been with Stantec since 2002.
Okay. With that, in the scoring matrix, just something to note. It's just a comment here. Under project team capacity and availability, rated the lowest. However, on the pricing, they rated the highest. Probably won't change my vote. However, it's just something to note. Have they got the capacity to fulfill the duties within this agreement? Is probably the question.
Through Councillor Depresser, or to Councillor Depresser through Mayor Hibbs. That's actually a question administration had as well. Just over some of the past performance, we had some concerns about capacity, and I think that was reflected in the scoring that was done before the interview. Stantec came into the interview and they presented a change in their lineup, if you will, that would create a lot more capacity and really strongly address the concerns that we had. So we basically started the interview with addressing the elephant in the room, and we felt that they responded very well to our scrutiny.
If someone wishes to make the motion, if we don't have any further questions, I would entertain that. Councillor Span.
I have one more question about that optional 3-year extension. Who determines whether that 3-year extension is exercised?
City Manager Gowdy.
It's entirely to the city's prerogative of whether it is extended, and a 3-year contract can be authorized by the CAO.
Motion people. Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I move that council authorize administration to enter into a 3-year general engineering services agreement with Stantec Consulting Ltd. with an optional 3-year extension subject to satisfactory performance.
Do not see any additional lights. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. Legislative Coordinator Post.
We're just having a small technical issue with our voting machine. It'll be up in a moment.
Sure. Yes, the sound is working. We're just waiting on technology in case we have anybody watching online. The motion is showing. I believe that's unanimous. Yeah, it is 7-0, so that is a unanimous decision. That does take us to the end of our requests for decision. We do have a in-camera portion of tonight's meeting, which we will move into. Just before we move into in-camera, I will comment that our next meetings, we are now back in full force. So 2 full meetings in September and then into October. So September 14th and 28th are regular council meetings, as well as October 5th is a committee of the whole meeting. We will be getting close to our organizational meeting as well. That typically happens in October. And that'll be very similar to our very first council meeting, where appointments are either made or reappointments made, some changes potentially in seating, setting meeting dates, et cetera, et cetera. I will take a motion to move us in camera. Councillor Span.
Have to beat Tory tonight. And Councillor Goings. I move that we go in camera at 8:08.
At 8:08, very good. I'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor, actually, do we have that? Oh yeah, there we go. It is on the machine, so I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is unanimous. We are now in closed session. Thank you.